extravaganza. My name's Charlie, and I'm taking the baton from Robert Hogendorn, who spoke with Vulcanverse yesterday. And of course, Ian Kane took us through days 1, 2, and 3. Check out all 4 of those AMAs already up on our YouTube channel. And today, for the final day, we've saved the best till last. We're very lucky to be joined by Michael Rubinelli, the head of Wax Studios, and a man with over 20 years of experience in the gaming industry. He's leading the platform's move from being a host blockchain to being a blockchain platform that creates its own in-house gaming content. How are you doing on this fine Friday, Michael?
Wow, Charlie, quite an intro. I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. This is my second AMA with DappRadar. The first one was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to this one as well.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. We have a Wax token giveaway over at the DappDays page, which you'll find at DappRadar.com. We're giving away $2,000 worth of tokens to 200 winners. You'll need to answer a question to enter, and you'll hear the answer somewhere in mine and Michael's conversation. So keep listening closely for your chance to win. Right, today we'll be discussing Blockchain Brawlers. It's the very first game out of Wax Studios, and it sees players collect wrestlers, rings, and gear as they bid for victory over their opponents. Brawl tokens, BRWL, is the Blockchain Brawlers in-game token. Our conversation will also touch on the wider Wax ecosystem, and I'm hoping that maybe we might get some juicy alpha. So let's kick off. Michael, tell us about your journey to Wax, your time in the gaming industry, and how you ended up working with blockchains and Web3. Over to you.
Wow, I'll try to keep you short. Like you said, I've got over 20 years, so let's not sort of discover the whole or go through the whole journey to Wax. But I started off, like all of us as a kid, dreaming about kind of making games for a living, and so many people along my kind of path to enter the industry told me it's impossible and I can't do this and I can't do that. And, because I'm not a programmer that's very good, like I knew really terrible languages that would never get used anymore, RPG2 and COBOL and, Apple Basic. And they said, yeah, you can't do this, go to school, study, become a lawyer, a doctor, or whatever your trade is. And I just said, games really speak to me. Like I love games and I love what it does. I love how it brings people together. I love how it makes me feel not validated, but I feel like I belong, right? Like I found my niche. I found my people that I really kind of have a lot in common with. And so I just went down this path, and I wouldn't be denied. Like I'm going to figure out a way into this industry. And I got really lucky. I started off my career at Electronic Arts, which is a great place to start your career.
Yeah.
I built a lot of games, and from there I've just kind of gotten to do things, and my love and my passion have carried me through. And in terms of how it led me to Wax, like I think it's real simple. As a gamer, you play games and you invest a lot of your time and a lot of yourself and a lot of times a lot of your money into something, and to not have anything to show for that other than kind of memories and potential friendships, which have value, it felt like this walled garden that was unfair to the player. And when you hear about Web3 technology and the ability to kind of own your assets, like that really spoke to me at my core as a player. My lifelong journey of always doing these things and walking away feeling somewhat empty and kind of bittersweet when you leave a game, like what Wax wants to do on Web3 in terms of kind of giving the power to the player and creating a player-to-player economy, like that so is core to who I am. I'm like, yes, I'm in. And so here we are.
So yeah, it's more than just earning, I guess, also the ownership thing, which is just as important, if not more, maybe.
Yeah, I'll tell you that, we never use the term play to earn anymore, or P2E. Yeah. Like it's verboten in our digital hallways. Like we do not say that, because earning it's such a dangerous mentality, right? And we understand why it is, and we respect that there's certainly people who view the world that way. But to us, we always say that earning is a result. It's not a goal. Like if I can build something that's fun to play, and I keep you in there for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, or a year or 2 or 3 years, like great. At some point you will have accumulated a lot of assets that have value, and you can do with them as you see fit. But my job isn't kind of built around, I need to figure out how to make every player profitable, because that's just.
But also, I think ultimately that won't really work, because you've seen over what's happened over the last 18 months, so many popular games have found their economies difficult to sustain, because if the ultimate goal is profit, there'll be some people who play the system, but some people who just want to play the games, but then they'll lose out.
Yeah, I would challenge you to show me actually just one that has worked, right? Like people say, well, Alien Worlds or Splinterlands or whatnot. But, those things are built on the backs of other players, and, botting activity and things that are deflationary are not always necessarily healthy, because it becomes this race to the bottom. And you have to be really, really careful. Like, you have to have a self-sustaining economy. You have to get players to care more about what they're doing, right? And not care about what is the bottom line. Second. Yeah, look, and it's a really dangerous thing for us to kind of enter into with Blockchain Brawlers. We've experienced it firsthand. Every single player that has come into our game has been a part of a rug pull somehow, right? Or a project that cratered. And so naturally that's their default position. Well, when will this crater? Or we're all going to make it? Or, when moon? Like, there's all these really kind of polarizing kind of thoughts, and it colors their thinking. And so when you invest in a game and you're trying to race to break even, and when you get there, you're like, "Whew, thank God!" Like, no game should make you feel that way. Like, oh, I have to hurry up and get my money back because I'm under pressure. Like, that's not a game. That's like, again, the gamification of decentralized finance, I think, is interesting. I think it's really dangerous, and there's a place in the world for that. It's not at Wax. Those things exist. God bless them. They should try to do that. They should kind of optimize around those things. We don't want to do that. We actually want to build entertainment. Right? Entertainment where you own your assets, which is a really powerful, powerful thing. We want to build a great community. I will tell you that I think that our Discord community is the greatest community in the world. Like, there are the collection of people there, the thoughtfulness, how much they lean in, how much they contribute. They make my job so easy. Like, there's almost no FUD in our channel. I mean, occasionally there is, because it's kind of inherent with the territory, but like, we get people to come into our game and care more about the bottom line. That's how you retain and engage, and you get them to give you the benefit of the doubt. And along the way, it's just this incredible journey to be a part of. And we're really, really lucky to have the audience that we have.
Cool. Yeah. Before we get into Blockchain Brawlers, I'm quite intrigued as to how you and Wax and the whole team have gone about trying to make something that's game first with the ownership on the side. What sort of things have you found, or techniques you've used? I don't want to go too far down it, because I don't want to put you on the spot or anything, but yeah, what have you tried to do to make it sustainable and a game first with the ownership side?
Yeah, Charlie, I think it's a really good question. I think the thing that we'll tell you is that we focus on making a game first, right? Yeah. Like, the ownership piece comes with the territory, like utility, NFTs, things that matter. Like, instead of just, the sort of 1,000 truths that you hopefully find in drops for you, and that Blizzard will tell you what you can and can't do with it, right? We just say, here's a game, and here's all the things that, you need to play. And by the way, you own all those things. So congrats, right? But really the focus for us, and this is really, really important, is like, you have to build a great game. Like, it starts and ends with that, because what we're actually saying to the world, not just the 40 million crypto bros that, play Web3 games, to the 3 billion gamers, like, look, this is a better use of your time. And we don't say it's a better use of your time because you can make money. We say this is a better use of your time. Stop playing, Clash Royale. Stop playing, PUBG. Stop playing, whatever. Or don't spend as much time doing those things. Instead, use a portion of your time to come play Blockchain Brawlers, because it is objectively more compelling, right? It's more fun to play. It's more interesting. It's more innovative. It's more thoughtful. It's more of these things. It's not relatively good because it's a blockchain game. It's objectively good in the grand scheme of gaming. And so when you start with that as your North Star, and everything you build is informed by that notion, it makes it really easy to understand kind of what is that path forward. And by the way, it's not easy to do. Like, building a great game that you replace kind of one of these, because we all as gamers, we play, 3, 4, 5 things on a regular basis, and you're trying to, change out a slot. Like, oh, this time that was spent for, call it League of Legends, I'm now going to spend on Blockchain Brawlers. Like, we have to validate that decision. And that's really what informs us.
And I think until there are really good games that can compete with the traditional games, those people who are resistant to moving over and just think it's a fad, you can't get them until you do make the thing that's going to be as good as the games they already play. But yeah, obviously there's people like yourselves who are making that happen, aren't there?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's our professional training. It's really funny. When Blockchain Brawlers came out, it worked really well. It scaled. It was really responsive. The UI was great. The contextualized menus, like, people are like, oh my God, I'm surprised that this is like so user friendly. I'm like, I'm surprised you're surprised. Like, this is just game development.
It must be. Yeah, I was going to say, you're like, well, we spent a long time in this, and we're professional game makers, so we hope it's good.
Right. Yeah, we're not project makers or website designers. We're game makers, and so we have a very lens of which we look at everything through. Yeah,
this isn't a gamified DeFi. This is a game with blockchain stuff on the side, maybe. Speaking of Blockchain Brawlers, as the first game from the studio and the first of many, how did it come about? How does it work? yeah, kind of maybe take us through up to the creation of it and then how it works as well, and how do you play it?
Yeah, it's it's really interesting. It actually started before I joined the company.
How long ago was that now? That was
Yeah, so that started development, like really kind of the earliest kind of ideation, if you will, was kind of September, October last year. And, we at Wax had led the charge on collections, right? So sort of gamified collections. So if you look at the Street Fighter collection that came out in February of 21, like it was unbelievably popular. People like, oh, this is so cool. And I'm blending and I'm upgrading. I'm doing all these things around IP that I love. And, collections became a really big thing. And we did a lot of stuff with, Topps and MLB and, AMC theaters and Spider-Man and whatnot. But we saw this shift away from kind of NFTs with no utility, purely collectible, to NFTs with utility. And in sort of the advent of, Axie kind of, got a lot of people's attention and said, okay, what is this? There's an appetite here. There's, loops and kind of gamified DeFi that maybe work. And so why don't we take that same idea and apply it to something different? And everybody loves wrestling. And we all kind of grew up, well, not all of us, but a lot of people grew up watching wrestling and said, okay.
And still at the moment.
Yeah,
it's a big industry, isn't it? Yeah, there are a lot of fans.
It's incredible. So we said, look, let's kind of give a nod to our childhood and our the love of the WWE and WCW, and let's take original IP and see if we can't build a wrestling game, or which we call Blockchain Brawlers, but put a gamified DeFi kind of lens on it like everything else did. And that's right when that got kicked off, is when I joined. And I said, hey guys, I don't think, this is sustainable. Let's build a real game. And they're like, okay, well, let's set up this initial phase where they're mining the token, and let's do all things around crafting and blending and kind of, all the things that are accepted. But then let's, why don't you tell us what that roadmap looks like for next year? And I said, yeah, no worries. And so the thing that was important to us is that we didn't know what we didn't know. And so Blockchain Brawlers became this real litmus test for us to understand audience and understand, player behaviors and kind of secondary markets and all these things, and how people are going to buy and sell. And so it was a real baseline for us as a company, right? Really. And the reason why I'm so heavily involved in Blockchain Brawlers is because we have to get this right. We want to get this right. We want to learn. We want to understand. We don't want to just kind of put something out in the market and say, oh, well, let's see what happens. Like, it's unbelievably important for us for Blockchain Brawlers to succeed. And so I'm leaning in everywhere I possibly can.
And it must be really exciting. Just sorry to interrupt there. It must be exciting for someone who's come from a traditional gaming industry, who's been working in that way for a long time, to be then doing something brand new, which is sort of every new step is sort of almost the unknown.
Yeah, Charlie, I'll tell you, it's really funny. In my career, it's a little bit sad, but to kind of realize your financial goals as an individual and to support your family and the lifestyle that you want, you kind of move up the ladder, so to speak. And the further up the ladder you move, the further away from the product you get.
Yeah.
And really, for me, the love of the industry was building content that entertained and enthralled and kind of set people on fire. And I got to that less and less and less in my career as I moved further and further up. But at Wax, they're like, look, we're a startup, we're $1 billion startup, but we're still a startup, and we don't have 1,000 people, and so you'll very much have your hands dirty with product, which was really appealing to me as well. So I said, I love to wear that hat. And so this feels like the good old days, kind of my producer kind of hat, if you will, or product manager hat, where I get to come in and build roadmaps and write product specs and engage with the community and all those things. Like, it's really, really fun for me to kind of rewind my career a few years back.
That sounds great. So tell us about how the game works. How you win it, how you play it, and then we can maybe go on to any future developments you've got in the works.
Yeah, it's really interesting from the standpoint of kind of what does that PvP want to be, because we have a browser-based game, right? And so browser-based games aren't necessarily, it's not a great platform for super twitchy things. Like if you're running 60 hertz fighting games, you can, but you don't have a D-pad or a DualShock controller and things of that ilk. And so the first thought we had is, okay, how do we build a game that's wrestling, that feels like wrestling, that has action tied to it, but yet how do we work within the confines of having a keyboard or a mouse or what have you? And so how do we marry those things together? Because the gamer in us wants to make a total beatdown, as you would expect, kind of historical games have been, which I've made in my career as well at THQ, when we had the WCW, then the WWE/WWF license. So that's a lot of kind of who I am. But we were but you know, if you look at the space, right? If you look at like Metropolis Origins, you look at Splinterlands, you look at kind of other really popular games in Web3, there's a lot of trading card games, right? So the first reaction was, oh, I know, let's make a trading card game where you have special decks and you can kind of see how that all plays out. And so what do? You call up Richard Garfield, who's made the most popular trading game in the entire history of the world and really created an entire genre in my mind. And we said, hey, Richard, we'd love you to make a trading card game and we'll put a brawler skin on it. And he's like, okay, I can't do that. And I won't do that because that's going to take way too long. It's going to take several years. And I'm kind of full. I don't have any kind of capacity. I'm like, oh, that's really disappointing. He said, well, look, he said, you know, it doesn't have to be a trading card game. He said, I actually have another game in the back of my mind that I've been building for a year. And he said, you know, if you like it, yeah, maybe you could use it. I'm like, wait, what? He's like, oh yeah, it's just this thing I built for fun because it's what I do.
On the side?
Yeah, just on the side. Like it was totally opportunistic. Like literally, like we went digging around in the attic and we found this thing. This is like, he's like, well, if you like, I'm like, well, you're Richard Garfield. Like you're one of the best designers in the history of the world. Like, what do you mean if I like it? It's like Prince saying, I wrote a song, but it may not be any good. Are you kidding me? So he sent us the prototype.
Did you like it?
Yeah, and we just absolutely loved it. And you know, the funny thing about it was, the first time you hear about it or you play it or you read the design, it's kind of confusing, it's kind of underwhelming. But then as you play it and you see the genius of his mind work, right? Like as you get kind of 2 to 3 games in, you're like, oh wow, there's strategy, there's subtlety, there's human behavior, there's reading your opponents, there's shifting kind of, you know, variables and ideologies about how to win. And so like it's devilishly clever. And we said, we love this and we can put a wrestling skin on top of this, not just cosmetically, but we can actually do some really, really fun things with our players, like our brawlers that we have. And so the way that it works, it's really kind of this wonderful thing. You're playing this head-to-head card game like poker, right? You have a hand, I have a hand, we bet on whose hand is better. And then while you're playing this card game in the foreground, in the background, but really your focal point is this match. It's the brawler that you've got, you've upgraded, you've collected, what have you. He's fighting your opponent's brawler who they've, you know, collected and upgraded and what have you. And while the card game is going on back and forth, these guys are, you know, they're doing moves to each other. They're doing a little bit of attack. There's no damage. All the damage that plays out in the hand will be reflected in the ring. And so if I win a hand and I do, like, I'm making up, you know, 8 points of damage, you know, I may do this spinning uppercut that knocks your head off and it spins, you know, 10 times and lands back on your neck because, you know, we can have fun like that. But the results of the hand plays out in the ring from a visualization standpoint. But what moves you do to the player are under your control, which is really, really nice. And so it feels a little twitchy in that regard. And all the moves you do are cosmetic. Like your damage is your damage. But your damage will map to the kind of move. Like, so if you do this hugely impactful, you know, damage in your hand, you can play a hugely impactful move from your collection of moves. And how do you get the moves? We're actually launching this crafting game at the end of this month where players are going to craft moves and they'll upgrade them and they'll sell those moves to other players or they'll use them themselves. There's this really cool kind of connective tissue that exists amongst all these different pieces. But the point is, the moves are crafted by the players and owned by the players and sold to the players by the players, like not us, right?
So how would crafting a move sort of work? Would they design it from the name to the action to the hit points, or would it be, is there sort of a pre-selected?
There's pre-selected. We're closing in on 4 dozen moves that the players can kind of craft on their own. Now the nice thing is it's random in terms of you'll craft a move. It'll be a common move. It'll either be an attack or a finisher, something about, you know, the Mortal Kombat kind of style fatalities. There'll be taunt moves that you can do to people, you know, flipping the bird, the double bird, the kiss my ass, all that kind of, like, those will all be in there. But you have to craft them, collect them. But to get the really, really visually like arresting, spectacular ones, you have to upgrade them. And how do you upgrade them? You upgrade them by collecting the lowest levels. And the lowest levels are very humble and very like, you know, punch, kick. But as you go up the path and you're collecting moves either that you've crafted or that you've bought or that you've sold to other players, you know, that's your path forward. And people are like, you know, so what? It's just an aesthetic. Like, right. Tell that to somebody who had their head ripped off with their spine dripping with blood in Mortal Kombat. Like, tell me that doesn't matter. Like, that absolutely matters. Like, you want to do that to somebody. And because we're going to allow for live streaming and we're going to have featured matches of the day and we're going to make this very visual, very public thing. Like, one thing I know about our community is they love to beat each other up and they love to tell them about how bad they're going to beat each other up. There's this kind of toxic masculinity that we actually love and embrace in the channels that we want to fuel, candidly.
Now, it being Blockchain Brawlers and the token being Brawl, do they have to spend Brawl to craft their moves moves.
They do, but it's very, very little Brawl. So it's 10 Brawl, and Brawl right now is 7/10 of a penny. So it's not very expensive to craft a move. We actually think it's really, really affordable. The thing that we've done, though, Charlie, is that we started off initially with the premise of, again, because we always want to learn, we saw other projects run out of tokens on the run up to kind of scaling. And we said, let's just take that off the table. Let's just let's mint 1 trillion tokens because we can, because we're wax, and we're not privy, or we're not kind of subjected to the same pressures that other companies have, right? Like we have a very kind of solid.
You're in control of the space, aren't you, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so we said, we're gonna mint 1 trillion tokens, and that'll be that. And players will never have to worry about us reminting again.
Yeah.
Like they're like, oh, good, you'll never run out. You won't deflate the currency, or dilute the currency, excuse me. And the thing that we found that was really interesting, again, we didn't know, we just assumed this was a really good thing for players. Like, we have 200+ years of tokens, don't worry. What we found, though, is this really kind of unhealthy behavior where players were, because there was no tension on the token amount, were collecting the in in mass and dumping all at once, which is a really unhealthy behavior, right? Like literally dumping 1 million Brawl at a time, 500,000 Brawl at a time. And that would step function down or really drop the price. And we'd see the price of the Brawl tick up all day. And then somebody would do a massive dump, like not a limit order, but a market order, and sell all at once. So we said, okay, we're going to put tension on the overall supply. So we burned 99.9% of the token inventory. So we went from 1 trillion down to 1 billion. And we said, when this mining phase is over, that's it. There's going to be no more Brawl. And that mining phase ended on the 2nd of August or the 1st of, no, the 31st of July, excuse me. Sunday, the 31st of July. It ended. Yeah. It ended. So there's no more Brawl to be mined. Now, how do you get Brawl, which is our token? You actually win it by playing, right? Or you sell it, you sell items to other players that have a lot of Brawl in their in-game inventory or in their wallets. And so what's really interesting is that we thought that with so much Brawl being out there, and the players hold about 600 million Brawl, we thought, oh, all the farmers and all the bots, they'll all just dump on the secondary market and Brawl go to like 1/10 of a penny. But it didn't. Brawl has held steady and maybe slightly creeped up since the end of the mining phase, which is really impressive. That it shows that people have a ton of faith in this project. Same with other prices on a lot of the secondary market items. So that feels really good for us.
1 billion Brawl is also, for a token, it's quite a small number, 1 billion. It's not certainly not on the bigger end, is it? So it's, as you say, you brought that attention back in, and it now actually means something to people. So sounds good. And I guess it's maybe also been affected by the recent upswing in crypto prices in general. Would that be fair to say, or is it not? Does it not really go in correlation with those?
Yeah, I don't know the link. The thing that I will tell you is that we don't operate our game based on cryptocurrency market prices, and I understand that they get conflated and they're commingled and all that wonderful stuff. I think the reality, the way that we see the world of wax in general, is that the power of Web3 for us isn't the price of Ethereum, right? The power in Web3 for us is ownership and interoperability. And people say, oh, wow, is your game going to fail because Bitcoin is down? It's like, well, our game would fail if we didn't allow players to own anything or take them out of the inventory and sell them on a secondary market. Like, that's really the power of Web3. And it's unfortunate that the crypto prices have come down, because it does actually handicap people's ability to speculate or to buy or to sell or to invest into something, right? Which is a lot of the language that's used by the players. We don't tend to use that language, that FI language or banking language, but we get that the players are constricted by market conditions, and we're not insensitive to that, but it doesn't drive our decisions or deter us necessarily. We're building something we think is, great, and we're building them for all the right reasons.
And as you say, you start building that first, the game first, not the FI side. So no matter what Bitcoin's doing, that should really have no impact on you, because Bitcoin is just a separate thing of a big industry. But it's completely separate.
It's a very separate thing of a very big industry. And we're just trying to build a great game, right? And people come into the channel all the time and say, tell me about your project. I'm like, okay, well, my project is a game. And they're like, well, how long until I can get my money back? I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. Like, well, you should know. Well, why should I know? Because that's what your goal is, right? I'm like, that's not my goal. That might be your goal. That's not my goal. And so I don't want to sound like we're completely insensitive to it, but I think that people come in, especially people that are new, right? They come in and they think that's our sole motivation. And that's just not how we're wired. We want players to have a good experience. We want them to feel like their time is well spent. We want them to feel like their investment and their attention and what have you is we do in a thoughtful way. We don't try to harm people or, separate them from their wallets in a really kind of punitive way. Like, we know that exists. And so we try to build things that make sense. Like, we're aware, but it's not our singular focus. And that's the real kind of, differentiation, I think, between us and other projects, right? And I say projects because I do think of them as projects, our game versus their website. Like, we want to build a really fun to play game where you own everything. And we put the power kind of into the hands of the players. And so, it's really interesting when you look at kind of the secondary market, right, which is a real power for the player, is that people say, oh, you make a ton of money off these secondary market sales. We actually don't. As a collector, we get a 5% fee, right? But the players get the other lion's share. Kind of over 90% of every single dollar that gets sold on this, gets traded on the secondary market is between players. And that's really what we want to do. We want to create this, what we call a participation model or a player-to-player economy, where really we get a little vig of everything forever, which is good enough for us. We have to make sure there's enough players, enough things to buy and sell, but that's the model that we focus on. So we really are aligned. Our risk is aligned with the communities, right? And as long as we do things that allow them to transact with one another, that's really our holy grail. Like, if there's a lot of things to buy and sell between players, then we are super happy. Right. And so that's a lot of how we see things as well. I think that we see a lot of projects that come in and do these huge ICOs and what have you, and or do these massive land sales to fund a project. It's like, okay, where's the risk? Yeah.
And I think if you're in this industry long enough, you start seeing those people coming along from quite a way off, don't you? And they're basically, I'm not going to use the term bug pools. And there's something about them that's quite transactional and quite sort of here today, gone tomorrow sort of attitude.
Yeah, look, I think the thing that we've seen time and time again, history is perfectly consistent on this. If you have everybody show up for the same reason, to do the exact same thing with the exact same expected outcome, what happens is this race to the bottom, right? And that's why these things all kind of play out the way that they played out. And people are like, well, you just need to add more people into the funnel. It's like, well, you're just creating a pyramid then. At some point, there's going to be a moment of atonement, and there's going to be somebody, I said the other day to somebody, I can't remember where it was, like, if you've seen somebody who did unbelievably well in a project, there's probably 20 people who did unbelievably terrible. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah, they're not the ones shouting on Twitter, are they?
Right. That's not healthy. People are like, yeah, look at all this money I made. And then here's a huge group of people saying, yeah, look at all this money you took from us, right? Because it's not the self-sustaining economy, which is where every game should try to get to, is have that equilibrium between supply and demand.
Now, you mentioned that you've got crafting moves coming in. What other things can the community here expect to maybe see in the next 6 months or a year? Is there anything you would be willing to divulge for us right now?
Yeah, the huge thing for us, and what's really, really kind of core to how Wax sees the world, and Wax Game Studios sees the world, is we want to be the group that drives the acceleration of adoption of Web3 gaming, right? Like, that's our stated goal, to make sure that every game in the next kind of 3 or 4 years has some element of Web3 in it. And how do we do that? We build a North Star. And how do we build a North Star? Well, we build a paradigm that is broadly accepted. How do you get broadly accepted? You can't just develop on Wax, right? So we will have, multi-wallet, multi-chain support. We will be, hopefully on, Solana and Ethereum and, Polygon, AVAX, Immutable, like all the different protocols that support kind of, Web3 gaming. We'll start there. And then once we have our cross-chain kind of, bridges or kind of, wallet sign-ins, then we'll move to the core gaming group. Like, now that we've got kind of cross-chain and it's really, frictionless for anybody in the world. Because again, we think the tribalism around chains is really unhealthy. And I think the misnomer a lot of times that people have, like, or the misconception is that Wax only builds on Wax for Wax because they're all about Wax. Reality, we're a separate entity. Our founders are the same of Wax Blockchain and Wax Studios, but nobody owns the Wax Blockchain, right? It's like owning the internet. You can't. Yeah. But Wax Studios, we want our content to be everywhere, right? Utility on Wax, because Wax is far and away the best chain in the world to play games on. And it's unquestioned. Like, it's just like, and we have that scale, right? We do, 52% of every single blockchain transaction every single day is on Wax. We have 13.3 million Wax Cloud wallet users. Like, our proof points are unassailable. Yeah. But we want to bring that same user experience in terms of utility to all these other chains that don't have as good of kind of user experience as we have. But we want to allow those players to sell in the marketplaces where they're comfortable. So we say utility on Wax, liquidity everywhere. So that's kind of phase one. That's in the next kind of, hopefully the next 3 months, you'll see us going live on other chains and having those chains bring their audience members into Wax. And then we'll go beyond, we'll go to the core gaming group, like we said, the 3 billion gamers, and we'll give them an easy onboard into Web3 gaming. They'll be like, wow, I wonder what I was so afraid of. Like, I've heard NFTs are the devil, and we're going to, burn the rainforest down and boil the oceans. That's not true. But publishers want you to believe it's true because they don't know how to build in this world, but we do, and we will. So,
Michael, just to understand properly, you're saying that Blockchain Brawlers is going to be going to all these other blockchains?
Absolutely.
And how do you get the NFT to move across to all the different ones with maybe different development standards?
Yeah, there's a couple different ways. The first and obvious way is do it through bridging, right? So you'll buy. So we understand all the different NFT standards, and we did it with Binance already. So the Binance Smart Chain, ironically enough, the first brawlers that you could ever buy, you would buy on the Binance Smart Chain. You wouldn't buy them on Wax. So we did an auction back in kind of November, December, where we sold assets on the Binance Smart Chain in conjunction with them. And we were like a top 5 collection on Binance just in the month of December, which is really, fascinating. And what would happen is players would say, okay, I want to take this brawler from Binance and I want to use it on Wax. How does that work? Well, you go into, your wallet and you bridge the asset over. We will put that BSC asset into escrow, and then we'll give you a clone version of the Wax standard. And then you can use that Wax standard in the game, and you can play, and you can collect, and you can craft, you can upgrade, and you can do all these things. And then if you want to sell that NFT, then you bridge it back to Binance, and we say, okay, we're going to lock up the Wax version of that NFT in escrow. Nobody can touch it, but we're going to now unlock your Binance version with all the sort of the data, whether it's mutable or immutable. We're going to then unlock that, and now you can take it and you can sell in the Binance marketplaces that you're really, really comfortable in operating in. And so it's literally bridges to everywhere. Yeah, at some point, the bridges have potential security concerns, although not on Wax. Like, Wax has never been down. Wax blockchain's never been hacked. But bridges are inherently a little bit risky for players.
I was going to say, does that bring any sort of worrying security risks?
Well, I won't tell you that anything is bulletproof, but I will tell you the security audits that we do are exhaustive. We have 3 different firms kind of attack every single contract that we have, every single everything. And we look at it 10 different ways to Sunday because we are so concerned about, the security of our technology and the hackability of our technology. Not only do we have unbelievably smart people building it, but that we have unbelievably smart people trying to find the holes, right? And so we don't take security lightly at all. But, bridges is the fastest, easiest path to, we've already got, kind of bridges to Ethereum and Polygon and Solana that are either in testing or that have been built or that we've understood, we've kind of done the homework on. And so it's not like, oh, at some point we'll look into it. Like these things we have an active kind of pre-production or in some cases production. And so it's not a long pole for us to get like an Ethereum bridge kind of up and running and able to be used publicly.
The idea of being able to sort of take an NFT up to here, to the edge of the bridge, or lock it down, then open it up over here. It's almost a perfect copy on the other side, isn't it?
Exactly what it is. That's exactly how it works. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a simple way around.
And we're going to go one step further, right? So we're going to take every popular wallet in the world and we're going to give them kind of a Wax cloud wallet pair. So if you have MetaMask and you come into the Wax cloud wallet world, it's like, oh, we see you're a MetaMask user. We understand kind of what you have and what you're all about. And, here's your Wax cloud wallet to transact and use as, again, the Wax cloud wallet is always the consumer, kind of entry point into a product. And once people realize how powerful and easy the Wax cloud wallet is to use, like, why don't all wallets work this way? Like the Wax cloud wallet is so unbelievably good at what it does and only getting better. And so
you make it two wallets talk to each other then and see what's in the other one. And then you say, well, you can have this on our blockchain then.
100%. Yeah, that's where we're going.
And I guess that whole openness and decentralization is the only way you're going to reach a much bigger audience, isn't it? Because that's what the whole idea is, kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, Charlie, what's interesting is we think that we've solved really hard problems in really elegant and easy and, kind of simple solutions, and things that are simple to explain are simple to understand. And this DeFi gamification world is really complicated for players. And that's why a lot of people have gone away. But if we make things automated or frictionless, we know we'll get broad adoption. And that's what drives a lot of our decisions as well.
Cool. Now, there's something you mentioned earlier about gaming blockchain specifically.
Mm.
What makes a good is what's something I want to get onto later on, but I thought we'd touch it now is already kind of there. Is what makes a good gaming blockchain and what makes them different to, say, a non-classically gaming blockchain?
Well, I think the thing that you have to understand from a gaming standpoint, just if we start at, whether it's console or it's free to play mobile or what have you, is there's this whole user experience. I think that's just, it's accepted. This is how this works, right? I have in-game stores, I have in-game marketplaces, I can buy and sell with my credit card. There's things that I'm not blocked or limited by, and I know how to use this, right? So usability and user journey is hugely important. And part of that user journey and usability is the rapidity of your transactions. Like, oh, I see this is for sale. I click on my, my iOS device, and now it's in my inventory, and I now get to use it. I keep moving forward, right? Because players are all about moving forward. It's all about progressing. It's all about, what's around the next corner. It's about leveling up. It's about beating a boss or winning a PvP match or whatever. And you don't want to be blocked by transactional kind of, delays. You don't want to be blocked by, I don't know where to go or what to do. And so when we think about blockchain gaming, in particular, games on Wax, like, the fact that we can, handle 8,000 transactions a second for a gamer is very much what they expect. When you are, when you're waiting, maybe even as little as 3 to 5 minutes for your gun that you want to buy because you want to go win a corridor shooter or a kind of a battle royale style game, and you need these things to be better. Like if you have to wait, that's a really terrible user experience, and that's 5 minutes. So if you go into any kind of like surge-based pricing experience and you're waiting 5 to 10 minutes or 2 to 3 hours or 2 to 3 days, like that's a terrible, terrible non-starter, and you'll never get broad adoption. But because Axe delivers these things pretty much instantaneously and for no cost or very little cost, like that's, again, very much what the players are used to. So you have to give them a paradigm that is kind of like, again, this is the bar. If you're not operating at this level here, you're never going to get players to take you seriously. It's like, well, you don't, like I said, you don't want to be like, well, it's good for Web3. Like, you don't want to be relatively good. You want to be objectively good.
Yeah.
And so the things that we're building in Blockchain Brawlers, in-game store, in-game marketplace, trading with players within the game, matchmaking within the game, like all these things are within the game, and they all happen instantaneously or very, very quickly. It's like, yeah, this feels like other things that I do that aren't on Web3. And that's really kind of the paradigm for us.
And so with 8,000 transactions a second, how would that sort of, if there was much broader acceptance of the platforms within maybe, I don't know, 5 years or something like that, and there was 1 million people playing a game at once, how would 8,000 transactions per second?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the thing that we're interested in seeing is that we know that, and look, we love all of our competitors the same, but we know that they're out writing big checks to big developers to build really kind of mass adoption style games. And we know their chains can't scale.
Yeah.
And so they're really going to be victims of their own success. They're victims of their own kind of grant programs. And that, like, as an example, and again, I have a tremendous amount of respect for the people at Polygon, but if you look on kind of early January this year, there's a game called Sunflower Land, right, I believe, and their game melted down the Polygon chain, right? Like, it could not scale beyond, I think, 375,000 users. It wasn't a million DAU. It was like 300,000, 350,000 DAU. And, surge pricing and game locked up, like there's just all these things that were a byproduct of them having a lot of transactional volume at one time, right? The concurrency. And so they put out a note on Twitter and said, kind of, we're shutting down for a little bit. We have some tech debt we have to, resolve. And they immediately called us and they said, how do we get our game onto Wax? And we said, well, the backends and the smart contracts, is very different. Like, it's going to be a heavy lift for you. And you maybe, not that you should have thought about this and shame on you. It's like, I don't think you can do that. But they're like, like, they really thought their solution was, we'll just take it off of Polygon and we'll move it to Wax, problem solved. If they're experiencing that problem then, and look, all these guys know that, scalability is an issue, but if you're a layer 2, you're blocked by your layer 1. If your layer 1 can't scale or isn't secure, then you don't control that roadmap. And so that's going to be an ongoing problem forever. I think people are going to realize that. But scalability at some point, to answer your question, is going to be a huge concern as we get more and more broad adoption. And, look, we keep our eye on kind of the tech journals and the sites that, and a lot of groups are building kind of, protocols that are just 100% scale focused, like massive scale, 100,000 transactions a second, 120,000 transactions a second, real transactions, not kind of server handshake. That's a transaction. No, updates to the ledger, right? And so
Yeah.
I think a lot of people who are visionaries in the tech space see that this is going to become an issue. And we're not going to just say, oh, well, 8,000, that's good enough. Like, we're also working on our scaling solution to get beyond our we actually had one day, I think, where we did a theoretical 10,000 transactions a second, but we know that if we have millions of DAUs and there's a high level of concurrency, that won't work either. So we're kind of trying to future-proof the chain that we like to support as well.
You mentioned sort of other blockchains, specifically other gaming blockchains. With the ever-growing number of those gaming ones coming up or sort of making big moves at the moment, how do you view the competition from the likes of Mutable X, Vulcan Forged, Ronin? Is it competition, or do you see it as room for everyone, or how does that look to you?
Yeah, look, I don't think we see anybody as competition. I think we're aware of other people and we wish them well, because really what we want to have happen is we want to have the technology and the platform be removed from the conversation. Like, we actually want the focus to go on the content. And the more broadly adopted kind of Web3 gaming is, the more it works for us, because we actually think we make the best content in the world, right? Because we have incredible, game designers and game makers, game producers, game artists, game UI folks on our team. And so the more that we get a larger kind of megaphone to shout from, like, the better it is for us. And we think Wax is the best, and we're going to try to continue to bring people onto Wax. But we don't fear competitions from other groups. We're actually eating our own dog food, right? We're building content. We're seeing how it works. We're seeing how audiences behave. We're understanding how to build a player-to-player economy, which, again, is not easy to do. I think that the mistake that a lot of developers, whether it's, EA or Tencent or Activision, like, oh, I'll just build and it'll show up. Like, yeah, it doesn't work that way. You guys resisted free-to-play gaming on the mobile space in 2010, 2011, 2012, and you got your hat handed to you. If you look at all the winners in the free-to-play space, it was none of the traditional players, right? It was Scopely was born out of free-to-play. Zynga was born out of free-to-play. Supercell was born out, like, hundreds of billions of dollars in value and revenue came from groups who said this will never work. It was taken from those groups. And Web3 is very much the same way. So people that are native Web3 are the ones who are going to win and rue the day. And the publishers that dismiss it are going to rue that they didn't. But this is what they always do. And so we continue to expect them to behave this way. In fact, I had a conversation with a gal who runs the entire Sims franchise. She's like, we're not going to do NFTs in the Sims. I'm like, it seems so perfect, right? You buy your Sim, it's an NFT. You buy little things around the house. You have these different experiences. Like, it's this wonderful thing. She's like, yeah, we think NFTs are terrible, and our community hates them. Like, well, you should educate your community about why they're good. Like, we don't have any interest in doing that. Well, why not? Because it's hard to do, and we don't know how to do it. Right. Well, then don't vilify NFTs. Oh, we will. I'm like, okay, great. That's
yeah. I guess if they can't do it, they may as well vilify.
Dude, there's so much friction there that they don't. Again, it's this fear of loss, and their mentality is like, look, I can figure out how to get 8% more out of my current business every year, and that's good enough for me, right? I don't want to change my business model, because a business model shift and a platform shift and a technology shift, like, these are extinction events for companies and franchises. Like, we see it all the time. If you look at every single kind of platform transition, 8-bit to 16-bit, 16-bit to 32, cartridge-based games to disk-based games to downloadable games. Like, there's a lot of groups that can't make that jump, and we get it. You're afraid of losing your job or losing money or losing whatever, right? And so you're not going to go that route. And look, we say it time and time again. These companies, they're building a bulwark up against the sea change in the world that is just indefensible. And, at the heart of business is risk-taking, right? And at the core of risk-taking is courage. And you have to be in the business of, kind of creating the possibility of greatness. And a lot of these groups don't want to. Like, they don't want to, be in the risk-taking position of this might possibly be great. They're like, I know this is good enough, right? And so
I guess they've got something to lose, haven't they? Therefore.
Right. Oh, they have a ton to lose, and that, and that's okay. That's fine. But to your point about other chains and do we fear them as competition? We actually want a really wide platform to put our incredible content into, because we're learning how to build a player-to-player economy, which is the most powerful thing in the world for us, right? And we're learning to understand how to onboard these players. We're learning to understand how to get them to kind of adopt the wallet and what all these things mean. Like, we are learning so much so quickly and applying those learnings every single day. It really doesn't matter, AVAX, Immutable, like, great. We want you to win. right? Because we want this broad adoption, because that's where, you know, our content, which really will be the differentiator, that user experience, that user journey we talked about, that's where we think we do and will continue to shine.
I'd be intrigued to know if your friend over at Sims actually dislikes NFTs, and what did she give any reasons for why?
Yeah, our community hates it. And that's a standard reaction. Our community hates NFTs. They think they're terrible. So you can either agree with your community and fuel that, or you can educate them as to why they shouldn't, right? And with Wax, if you look at how eco-friendly we are, if you look at, like I said, kind of the increased utility, there's all this stigma around, like even Richard Garfield initially hated Web3 gaming and NFTs. And it was like two separate conversations, just explaining the philosophy of how Wax works and how Web3 gaming works and what player ownership is like, because you can say that he created the most successful secondary market video game in the world with all the kind of the items that got traded, whether it was digital or physical items that got traded. Like, that's a unbelievably robust thing that he built. So he should have an appreciation for allowing players to own their assets. So once we got him over the hump, he's like, oh my God, I'm in. I'm totally in. I love what you're doing, and therefore I will work with you. It was, you know, 2 meetings of, I have no interest in NFTs are terrible, to when you educate, they're like, oh, you see this light bulb go off. Like,
yeah,
oh,
I mean, I guess when you learn they're not all just speculative profile pictures, that they actually, there's more to it than, you know, a Bored Ape. But I'm not having a go at Bored Ape, I'm just saying that there's more than just you see on maybe the mainstream news channels.
Yeah, exactly. And NFTs with utility is what it's all about for us. And we're always trying to find new ways to increase utility. So, you know, it's a never ending journey. And I think that the mistake that people make with us is assuming that, oh, is that it? You know, that's never it, right? We have things that are going all the time, and people, you know, we have this mode that we think is going to come out separate from this Richard Garfield thing, you know, in a couple of months. We hope it comes out, and it's going to be very much a very different way to play. And it's all around collecting all your NFTs and, you know, having this power base that's driven off of what you own and possess. But people now are just selling these assets like crazy. And at some point, when holding those assets like crazy is the winning strategy, they'll say, well, why didn't you tell me? I'm like, well, first of all, you know, we don't announce things officially until we can. And you want me to tell you not to sell or to buy? I'm not going to do that either, because I'm not going to give you financial advice. You have free will.
Well, I was going to say, at some point, you kind of
that's all there is. Right. We're never done. Right. We're always going to be trying to accumulate and deliver great things that we know our community wants.
Now, we moved away quite a bit from Blockchain Brawlers itself there. I wanted to just kind of ask you quickly, Michael, today.
Yeah.
I understand that Summer Block Party is starting.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Tell us about Summer Block Party.
Well, Summer Block Party is this incredible thing. Look, I think that when you normally see a big promotion, like, we're giving away over $30,000 worth of stuff in the next, you know, kind of 3 weeks, right? 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And what you typically see when a publisher or a developer does something like this, like, oh, it's this huge user acquisition drive, like giving away all these prizes, trying to get signups, trying to get people to install. We actually don't want to get any installs of our game, because there's no game to play yet. The PvP game is coming out in, you know, 6 weeks or whatever it is. So we're giving away $30,000 worth of value just to our existing players as a thank you. Like, you know, we appreciate your patience, we appreciate your support, we appreciate all that you've gone through, and to show you how much we appreciate you, we're going to give you kind of $30,000 worth of value over the next few weeks. And, you know, really, that's what it is. It's kind of a little bit of a love letter to our community, because they've been so supportive and they've been so good, right? And so the things we're giving away have unbelievable appeal. So we're really, really excited about that. And it's simple. All you have to do is go to the Blocks link and, you know, make sure you're registered, and you have you need a miner's badge, which, if you played the game, like, one of the things we did, we dropped 8,800 NFTs into players' wallets when the mining phase ended. Here you go. Here's 8,800 NFTs. We just dropped them into players' wallets, and they're like, great. And they took them and they immediately sold them for like 25 cents or 40 cents. But then we announced this program, like, well, if you have this badge, like, why didn't you tell me you're going to do this? Like, because we don't want to give you the answers to the test.
Yeah, you want to weed out the real fans, don't you?
We really do. And so what happened is all these players went and they started buying all these badges super cheap, because they have a tremendous value now. It's a ticket to win up to $30,000. Like, well, you should have told us. Like, well, that's, you know, look, yeah, I get it. You want to know. You want to know everything.
There's a lot of people who want spoon feeding, don't they?
Yeah, it's okay. We get it. We understand them. We love them. We embrace it. There's a little bit of dysfunction there, and we're a little dysfunctional ourselves, so we get along really well.
So how long's the Summer Block Party going on for?
It's going on through the end of August.
Nice.
Yeah.
And is that linked at all to, I've been reading about the Brawler Seal.
Mm-hmm.
And is that linked to the summer block party?
It does.
And there's a leveling design and meta loops. Can you talk us through these big technical terms?
Oh boy, yeah, I can. We could do a whole hour on just the appeal of the Brawlocene and how it works and what it does. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So the Brawlocene is, first of all, it's the most beautiful NFT I think I've ever seen. It's really clever. There's 18 different layers, or 12 different, I think, Easter eggs in there for players who play the game. So there's a lot of tip of the cap of, kind of where you've come from. So that'll appeal to the people who have been there. But really what it is, it's a crafting pass. And we sold 150 of them, I think, so far, something like that. And every single player that comes into the game that hasn't been a historical player. So all the user acquisition we do down the road when the PvP game goes live, in September, like players who are new to Blockchain Brawlers, how do I play? You buy things from people who own the Brawlocene. Oh, so I can start playing at a low cost, like not hundreds of dollars, but, maybe dozens of dollars, like, $20 to $25 to get started playing the game. You're not buying it from Wax, you're buying it from players. And what players? The players that are Brawlocene owners. Like, oh, so every single new player that comes into the game will be buying from an existing player. Yes. And the Brawlocene owners are crafting those starter assets. And that's really what the paradigm is.
Now, I have one more question. And I've got a question, and it's quite a specific one. And it's from my friend Ian at work. He is a big wrestling fan. And he said that you have your Ric Flair wrestler in Blockchain Brawlers. Are there any plans to add any new big name classic wrestlers to the roster of fighters?
That's a great question. We get that a lot, as you can imagine. Look, the story that sometimes some people know this, some people don't, but we were in deep conversation with the WWE before Blockchain Brawlers came out about licensing their entire kind of catalog of brawlers.
Or making it, instead of Blockchain Brawlers, it would have been a WWE game.
It would have been a WWE brawling game, right? And their whole entire roster, right? So all the people you love, Undertaker, John Cena, on and on and on, RKO, you name it. Like, they said, sure, we'd love to do that. All it costs you is like $20+ million. It's like, this is Web3 gaming. It's not like this mass market. Like, we're not Sony console, right? We're a humble Web3 game. Like, well, we don't care. This is what we think it's worth. And this is like, there was no contextualization of what it was that they were asking
to the future of what it could mean in 5 to 10 years time.
So we said, well, let's go original IP route because we love brawlers and we can create original ones that are fun and actually get more creative license. But let's get Rick and see if because Rick's not on the roster, and Rick's a guy who had an NFT collection. And we said, let's see if we could work with him from a promotional standpoint. And he said, yeah, I love what you're doing. I'm in. And that worked well from an NFT standpoint. Now the question is going forward, is the conversation different if we go back to kind of known celebrities, right? If we re-up with the WWE, if we re-up with kind of, All American Wrestling or Nitro or any of those other factions, like, or All Japan Wrestling, is there a different story to be told where we now can negotiate from a position of not power, but just more known? Like, look, this is the size of the world, the size of the audience, but this is what you can do for your brand. And so I'm sorry, Ian, I think the short answer today is no, but if it works and the people want it and we can scale it, then the answer is yes. So never say never, but no plans at this point in time. But it's not a hard no. It's just I don't think so today, but ask me tomorrow.
Not imminently, but potentially in the future.
Right. Exactly.
Now, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on about Blockchain Brawlers or Wax Studio that we haven't spoken about today? Because I've done a lot of asking of questions, but maybe there's something that you wanted to specifically talk about that we haven't touched on.
Yeah, no, look, I think the thing that I say to people all the time, and if people have seen me, do a stream before, this is a lot of kind of rehashing old territory, but we have a really, really long lens kind of perspective on the category and on this game specifically. So people will come in and say, well, I don't like what it is today. I'm like, okay. That doesn't mean you won't like what it is tomorrow or the next week or the next month, because again, we're looking at running this for many years. And so again, when you know that we are in this for the very, very long haul, and that we have a well-funded group and a well-funded team and a very talented team, that just because you may not love the paradigm that exists today, doesn't mean you won't like it tomorrow. As an example, the initial, Blockchain Brawlers game that's coming out from a PvP standpoint is a card game, and it seems simple and it seems maybe not that interesting to everybody. I tell you, it will be appealing to a certain sect, and some people will absolutely love it, but it may not be for everyone. Just playing a card game in a vacuum with wrestling moves that play out on the screen.
Yeah.
But know that hopefully by the end of the year, we have now a ranking system, right? Just like standard esports games, iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, challenger, master series. And within those, ranks, we'll have the ability to move up. Or some people like progression. And all of a sudden, we're going to be doing these global tournaments, right? These global tournaments will be live streamed. All of a sudden, it's going to feel much more like this, oh, I like esports. Like, okay, like we want to build this large self-sustaining thing that we're bringing in, Kellogg's and Slim Jim and Mountain Dew and all these other groups to sponsor these events, and it's on TV and people get like that's a paradigm that people will kind of lean into. And like we want to build this thing that transcends that core experience, but we're always looking to transcend what we have, right? So just because you may or may not absolutely love what we're doing, know where we're going, we think is super interesting, and know that it's super aggressive and that it wants to be much bigger than this humble aspiration of, well, it's a card game played by people who have a wax cloud wallet. Like we want it to be everywhere. We want it to be part of the zeitgeist of gaming, and give us the benefit of the doubt and be patient with us, and don't try to figure out how to make your money back as soon as possible, because that's not our goal. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess there are other games for that, but Blockchain Brawlers, the goal is not to just come and make a profit in 2 months.
Yeah. I mean, is it possible? Of course, anything's possible. It all depends on what the players buy and sell to each other for. We don't actually control that. Right.
Yeah,
we don't. And people get mad at us. I'm like, don't blame me. I don't set the market prices. You guys do. I have an expectation. It's usually wrong because players do things that are never like, we thought the gold NFT that we were selling would be worth $25 to $50 initially in Blockchain Brawlers. They sold for $380 a piece. Like no model that I built said, okay, $400 per gold drop. Okay, let's model around that, because that's just so far beyond the pale. But once it happened and we made the adjustments and understood player behaviors, we have the ability to very quickly live operate things to make sure we're reaching that supply demand equilibrium.
So kind of talking about, give us the benefit of the doubt, we're building stuff for the future, and we want to make it sustainable, it's going to last a long time. Do you see where you are now as sort of maybe where arcade games were in the 80s maybe, and there's that much space to grow into?
I think I would think that the mining phase was pre-arcade games in the 80s. Like we weren't even to that level. And candidly, we were too late to capture any kind of momentum from that wave, and that's fine. We learned a really painful but helpful lesson. I think where we're going in the next kind of 6 to 8 weeks when the PvP game comes out is well beyond the arcade game in the 80s. Like you're like, oh wow, this is a real game. It's 3D moves, 3D interfaces, high levels of polish, like tons of animations and particle effects and explosions, and like this feels very much like games in the kind of the 2012, 2015 era, right? Like it's much more grown up, much more quickly, right? And so, like as an example, we're gonna have the browser-based version that comes out immediately, and then the fast follow is gonna be a downloadable client, which is gonna look even more spectacular. And then at some point soon thereafter, there'll be a free-to-play mobile version on iOS and Android, or free-to-download mobile version on iOS and Android. So that'll feel very much like the current paradigm for gaming. Like, oh yeah, I play on my browser when I can on my client, and then when I'm on the go and I have to, go somewhere with the wife, and I'm bored to tears, I'm going to pull out, I'm going to on my iOS device, and I'm going to beat a few people down. I'm going to feel really good because I'm moving forward. I'm moving up the ladder. I'm upping my ranking in my ELO or MMR and Like this is going to feel very grown up very quickly. Like there's going to be this huge hockey stick of perceived progress. And so that's where I think we're going to be in the next couple months. And the proof will be on the screen. It's not just me with hyperbole and, puffery. Like I will let the assets on the screen and the experiences speak for themselves.
I've got one question that's come in from a listener, and they're asking. I think they've maybe got a view to the giveaway we've got over at DappRadar, and it's what is crafting in Blockchain Brawlers?
What is crafting in Blockchain Brawlers?
Yeah,
crafting is everything. Crafting is, like I said, when you craft an asset, there's a bunch of things you can do with it. You're going to craft. Okay, so let's just real quick overview. To play the PvP game, you need a brawler NFT, which you can buy them on the secondary market. They're reasonably priced. They're widely accessible. That's no friction there. But in order to continue to like owning a brawler NFT, our Series 1, because there are no more Series 1s, by the way. We put a limit on that. There's no more crafting the Series 1. Players can't craft. You have to buy from a player. That's one. So that's your ticket to enter. But now to play, you actually need a deck of cards numbered 1 through 8. you need a series of attacks, you need a taunt or two, and you need a finishing move. So there's 11 cards that you have to own to play. And we think they're going to be fairly inexpensively priced initially. The Brawliseum, the crafting will craft those 11 assets. Will be sold on the secondary market. The secondary market will be embedded inside the game again. So you don't have to go to Atomic Hub. You don't have to go to Nifty Blocks or NFT Hive. We love all those guys, but we're going to, again, we want this to feel very native. So like, oh, in Brawlers, I can just show up, go to the site and buy things there if I have Brawl. Absolutely, you can. Like, okay, great. Like, again, removing friction. So the crafting crafts assets to allow players to play, if that makes sense, right? As long as you can go into the store and buy those assets, then you can play the game. Like crafting is literally vital. The crafting experience, by the way, like if you've seen this machine that we built for crafting, it feels like Willy Wonka's everlasting gobstopper, if you know the reference. Like there's switches and dials and effects, and there's these really cool things that happen. And like, it's this whole thing unto itself. Like it's the most fantastical thing you've ever seen. And it's just gorgeous. It's a ton of fun to use. That's like this whole other like game feature just to craft, like because we care that much that we made crafting over the top cool. But it's vital to the growth of the community. It's vital to the growth of kind of player engagement. And it's vital to this whole notion of upgrading my assets. So if I want to put you in a sleeper hold in front of 10,000 people, I'm going to. And when I do that, the game is going to play, a lullaby, 99. And I was like, oh, I'm so glad I got that move. And you got that move because somebody crafted the assets to allow you to obtain that move.
You've made asset crafting very exciting. I
think so.
I want to go and do some now.
It's incredible. Like, the Brawliseum is going to go live at the end of this month. And when players get it, they're like, oh, I didn't know it was going to be this cool or this fun or this compelling. I assure you I think it's the greatest thing we've done so far. And again, there's a lot that's gone into it. And it's really involved because it's so important.
There we go. Big words there from Michael. The greatest thing they've done so far. It sounds exciting. All right, we're going to end on one more question, and then I'll let you get off. Okay. What's the best way for someone to get started on Blockchain Brawlers today? Or how do they get started? Basically, go to the site, get your Wax wallet.
If you have a Wax wallet, great. If you don't, go to wax.io and open a wallet. It could not be any easier. It's single sign-on. It's a couple of clicks, and you're in. It helps if you have if you have 5 Wax P, that's all it costs, which is 50 cents, and basically your wallet is open, and then you can use any game in the Wax ecosystem. But open your Wax wallet first, and then go to bcbrawlers.com. The challenge is that we're past the mining phase and we're before the PvP phase, so you're sort of in this no man's land. But if you want to get in and start to familiarize yourself with the game and the interface, you can go in and look around. I would encourage you to go to play.bcbrawlers.com. And then there's a left navigation section where all the news items are, and just read the Medium blog posts. Like we have so much documentation about the game, how it works, how it's going to work. We have videos, we have tutorials, we have a ton of stuff. If you want to do a deep dive on kind of where we're going and what we're all about, the Medium kind of collection of blog posts that lives inside of play.bcbrawlers.com, play.bcbrawlers.com is a great place to start, provided you have your Wax Cloud wallet.
Cool. I don't think there's anything else from me. I did want to kind of I felt like I've kept you for so long, but I kind of wanted to talk about Music Mogul. But have you got 2 more minutes to tell us about Music Mogul? I
do have 2 more minutes. Music Mogul's great. We can talk all about it if you want to.
Yeah, go for a few minutes. I want to hear about it.
Well, so Music Mogul's a really interesting idea we've had for a long time, right? And it's always been about kind of what is the joy for players on fantasy sports, and how do we bring that to the music world? And we know that, tycoon games are very popular. We think the NFT kind of construct maps really well to, building your own record label. And so we had Music Mogul kind of ready to launch in April and May of this year as just very similar to Blockchain Brawlers. Like you go out there, you mine a currency, and at some point we'll have a PvP. But when we saw that the mining was a dying entity and we needed a reason to have people take what they're mining and put it into something more powerful, we said, okay, let's put the pause in Music Mogul, and let's not launch a game until we have a PvP that feeds into a player versus player mode, right? So on day one, when Music Mogul goes live, what you'll do is every single day you'll have your artists. They'll be in different genres. You can send them out on tour. The touring gigs are from a half hour, do a radio talk show, to headline at Coachella sort of thing, where it's 3 days and you're getting a ton of currency back. The currency you're getting back, you're then taking that and you're saying, okay, I'm a Music Mogul. I'm gonna rent a booth, a recording booth. I'm gonna hire a sound engineer and a mixer and a composer and a lyricist, and I'm gonna write a track. And that track I'm going to enter into a weekly streaming competition. And depending on all those components that you have of the quality of your engineer, the sound booth, all those things that you've done, the quality of your artist at the time, will then algorithmically figure out where your song is or your track or your tracks are relative to everybody else in the world. And then every Sunday night or Monday morning, whatever, we'll publish the charts. What artist, what song, and how many streams they get. And depending on where you are in that leaderboard, one to N players, you'll get a currency that's really powerful that then you'll use to then reinvest into your artist kind of, portfolio of artists, or your collection of artists, that you'll be able to go out and do more tours and do bigger gigs that are higher rarity, that'll earn you more currency, that'll allow you to get better sound engineer, more time in the booth, more things. So there's this nice kind of ping-ponging back and forth between kind of daily play and weekly play. But we said we're not going to go live until we have real global competitions that are interesting, right? And there's all this RNG involved. So you go to tour, you may not actually get paid fully for whatever reasons. There's risk rewards, and that we know players like risk rewards, not the fait accompli. And so you have to have every genre because you want to cover every touring type. And then you want to have every genre so you can record songs on every chart type, because again, the streaming competition is broken down between hip hop and pop and country and EDM and rock and what have you. So there's a real reason to collect a lot of different people across a lot of different genres to make sure that you can always never be blocked by not having the content. And that's really what Music Mogul is all about.
Now, I know this is I'll end up on one question. I know that's a question all developers hate, but when Music Mogul, I guess.
I missed that last part. I'm sorry.
When is Music Mogul coming out?
So Music Mogul is coming out this fall. It's if you really kind of hold my feet to the fire, I think it's sometime beyond October 1. It's not far away. I think it's within the next couple of months. I think it's close. But again, we want to make sure that we get that right, and all the lessons that we're going to learn in Blockchain Brawlers from a PvP standpoint and a leaderboard standpoint, and all those things that we're doing will be applied to Music Mogul. Because again, when we come out with Music Mogul, we want it to be informed by every single thing we've learned up to that point. And we don't want any gap or any kind of, flawed user experience to be present. We want them to go, oh, wow, this is really complete. Yeah, it's really deep. Yeah.
Right. I've taken up too much of your time already. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you very much, Michael. And thank you for your instructive answers as well. To everyone else, that's it for DappDays. We hope you've had as much fun as we've had, and I hope everyone has learned something throughout the week. Well done to all the prize winners. And I'll say GN to everybody and have a great weekend. See you later.
Thanks, Charlie. It was great.